Officer, can I join others in saying Ramadan Mubarak? It's a month of sacrifice, of reflection and charity, and we remember those that are less fortunate both here at home and around the world. Officer, we live in serious times with a cost of living crisis and an NHS crisis. And given this is my last opportunity to question the First Minister, I do want to ask about the finishing touches to, I'm sure, will be a handover document for her successor. And I think it's important to check what she believes is in the in-tray for the next First Minister. Because after 15 years of SNP government, there is not a single Scottish institution that is stronger now than when her party took office. From the ferry scandal, the entrenched attainment gap, the NHS crisis, to decimated local services. Which of our government's many failures does the First Minister think her successor needs to address first?
First Minister.
Well, with greatest respect, Anna Sarwar is just wrong. I mean, let's look, first of all, at some of the institutions that didn't even exist when I became First Minister. Revenue Scotland, for example, making sure that we have the most progressive income tax system anywhere in the UK. Social Security Scotland, delivering benefits to people across the country, including the Scottish Child Payment. The Scottish National Investment Bank, leading this country's drive now to net zero. The NHS, of course, facing real challenges as a result of the COVID pandemic, but still with the best performing A&E departments anywhere in the UK. Tomorrow, I will be in Fife, opening our new National Treatment Centre there that will deliver more operations for people in Fife and will soon be joined by national treatment centres elsewhere across Scotland. In education, more young people from the kind of background like mine going to university than has ever been the case before. A doubling of early years education and childcare. I think that is strengthening of many, many institutions. Does my successor have a tough job? Of course, because we live in tough times. But I've got confidence that whoever my successor turns out to be, whoever is standing here next week, they will continue to build on that record and they will continue to retain the trust of the Scottish people.
Anna Sarwar.
I know Nicola Sturgeon can try and take credit for lots of things. I'm not sure she can take credit for creating the National Health Service. I think that might have been a previous government. Now, Nicola Sturgeon likes to talk about records. Here are just a few set in her time, piling up in her successor's sky-high in-tray. Record A&E waiting times, with 1 in 7 Scots on an NHS waiting list. Record drug deaths. Record vacancies for nurses and doctors in our NHS. Record levels of children without a home. Record levels of homelessness. I could go on and on, but seeing as it's our last First Minister's questions, I won't do that. It is hard to see how our successor will be able to fix these problems as they were sat round the Cabinet table with her. The decisions taken around that Cabinet table resulted in over £3 billion of taxpayers' money wasted since 2007. That's £1,200 for every household in Scotland. And at the same time, they spent public money to build a culture of cover-up and secrecy, which is now beginning to unravel, all while Scots struggle to keep their head above the waterline. And given the scale of the challenges piled up in this in-tray, does the First Minister agree with 2 of the 3 SNP candidates that mediocrity, continuity and incompetence won't cut it?
First Minister.
Well, firstly, Presiding Officer, I never claimed to have created the National Health Service, but what I will claim to have done is help protect the founding principles of our National Health Service, because I was the Health Secretary that abolished prescription charges for everyone in Scotland, something that in all their years in government Labour had never ever got round to doing. I also took a hospital privatised under Labour back into the National Health Service. On Anna Sarwar's £3 billion figure, I think we've already shown that in previous sessions of First Minister's questions to be utterly nonsense, but I'm not going to embarrass him by going back to the detail of that again today. But let me use another £3 billion figure, because that is the number for the amount of money this government is investing each year to mitigate the cost of living crisis, to help people deal with Tory austerity. If we were an independent country, we wouldn't have to mitigate Tory austerity. But while Labour still prefers to see this country governed by Tories at Westminster rather than have self-governance and independence here in our own Parliament, Labour will never ever be taken seriously in Scotland.
Sarwar.
I, like many people right across the United Kingdom, look forward to the next general election when we can boot out the Tory government and we can get rid of the last SNP excuse. Now, the First Minister has spent much of her political career talking about mandates. Her successor inherits this woeful SNP record, but they don't inherit her mandate. The last election was a pandemic election, one in which the First Minister won with a direct appeal from her to steer the country through the pandemic and the COVID recovery. That recovery hasn't even started. In fact, by every metric, things have got worse. And now Scotland faces two crises: an NHS recovery that never began and the cost of living crisis, families facing spiralling bills and soaring energy prices. But as her potential successors squabble over their own record in government, they can't escape facts. They don't have a plan for Scotland and they don't have a mandate from the public. And that is why we need an election now. So in my final question to Nicola Sturgeon, does she agree with her own words? There are no words to describe this utter shambles adequately. It's beyond hyperbole and parody. Reality, though, is that ordinary people are paying the price. The interests of the party should concern no one right now. An election is now a democratic imperative.
That was about the Conservatives at Westminster, and the difference, one of the differences between me and Anna Sarwar is I don't support Tory government of Scotland because Scotland does not vote for Conservatives. And I fought three general elections as SNP leader, and the SNP has won all of them. And at every one, we've heard the same messages from Labour, and at every single one, the people of Scotland have cast their verdict. I am proud of the achievements of the governments that I have led. Let me end on another one, because it is related to COVID recovery, and it has been achieved in spite of what we're having to deal with from the Conservatives at Westminster. Today, Scotland has record high employment, record low unemployment and record low economic inactivity. We have a good foundation in this country. We face many challenges. But I have every confidence that my successor, who will be standing here next week, will continue to lead this country forward, will continue to take the decisions that are in the interests of this country, and that they will lead this country to becoming an independent nation.